the distinct pleasure of introducing a fellow graduate of Forest Park High School. But before I do that, I just want to take just a couple seconds to recognize that, not only am I a police officer that has graduated from our esteemed high school, as is Eliot, but I was thinking today and wrote down several names of some other graduates who went on into law enforcement, some serving in our department, some probably a lot more than I know who have served with Cincinnati, and then even some that have gone across our great country, and including one of our members' sons, who unfortunately was killed in the line of duty back in 1996, Daniel Frambies. He was a Pomona, California police officer, and I believe he graduated probably in 1977 from the high school, would be my guess. And then we also have another hero who passed away while on active duty, and that was Charles McDonald, who worked with Forest Park Police Department. He passed away back in 2001. And then the Forest Park Police Department, we've had, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 that I can recall off the top of my head, police officers that have served our community, and of those, 6 are retired and 2 are still active. That includes myself and Corey Hall, if you know Corey. And then with Cincinnati, obviously we have Eliot and Calvin Johnson, if you remember Calvin Johnson. I don't know if he retired from Cincinnati, but he retired. So quite a list of individuals who...
My brother Brett Isaac, graduated Forest Park High School, retired last year as a lieutenant, and then we lost Kevin Crayon.
Ah, that's right, Kevin Crayon, another hero who gave his life for the community. He was a graduate of Forest Park. Yeah, so a lot more than I'm forgetting, but I digress. I want to introduce my esteemed colleague and a great graduate from Forest Park, and I'm going to need my glasses for this. So Chief Isaac is currently the Director of Public Safety and the Chief of Police for the University of Cincinnati. And he was just telling me that he can't believe it's already been a year since he's taken that position. Prior to that, though, he began his career with the Cincinnati Police Department in 1988. During his time as an officer, he worked patrol in Districts 1 and 4. He worked the Community Policing Unit in District 1 and the Violent Crimes Unit and the Investigative Unit. In 1997, he was promoted to sergeant, working day shift, and then he also transferred to the Internal Investigation Section as an investigator. In 2002, he was promoted to lieutenant and served in that role as the District 4 third shift commander. During his time in Cincinnati, he served as night chief, Internal Investigations Section commander, District 4 commander, captain of criminal investigations, and then became the executive assistant police chief. In 2015, he was promoted to the chief of police. He notably led crime reduction efforts that yielded a 23% reduction in property crime, a 32% reduction in violent crime. He also managed and launched new technology, and this is important stuff: body-worn cameras, the shot spotter technology, and that covers 13, at the time, covered 13 square miles. I would imagine it probably covers even more today. And then he also introduced a new records management system known as Axon, and I can speak from experience that when you are the executive leader of an agency and you implement a new records management system, this is why I have gray hair. That's why he has none, because he had several thousand employees to teach. I had 30 or 40 some. Isaac holds a Bachelor of Arts and holds a Master of Science in Human Resource Development, both from Xavier University. He's a graduate of the FBI National Executive Institute, the FBI National Academy, Leadership Cincinnati, the Senior Management Institute for Police, and the Urban League African American Leadership Development Program. He was also a member of the United States Army National Guard for 6 years. I would like to introduce and welcome Chief Eliot Isaacs.
Two Chargers that have done okay, I think. still very proud to be a Charger. And wow, very nearly a lifelong resident of Forest Park. I feel somewhat at a disadvantage. Last month, you had my classmate, Burl Love. Burl and I graduated class of '84, as some of your children in this room also have. And it's kind of unfair to follow a journalist when you're doing a talk. So I don't have anything as deeply presented, I'm sure, as Burl did, but I want to just talk a little bit about, my life in Forest Park, and kind of how that has led me on my path in my career. My family came to Forest Park in 1977. My father had gotten a promotion. We had lived prior to that in Gary, Indiana, and we located here to Cincinnati. We moved on Lockport Court, right down the street from the Brett's, absolutely. And it was very fond memories. I think of life in this community, something very special and very unique. Not perfect, but very special and very unique, to where I talked to a lot of people over the years, and they have not so fond memories of the communities that they grew up in or the schools that they attended. But I look back and I have nothing but fond memories in spite of, some of the other things that were going on in the world around us. We were sheltered from a lot of that at the time and not even realizing what we were experiencing. And that kind of led me on my path. We spent the first couple of years here in Forest Park, living over in the L section. My father got another promotion. That transfer, we went to Florida, and we only stayed there a year. He got an opportunity to be transferred back. My family decided they wanted to come back to Forest Park because they love this community so much. And then we moved on Mandarin down the street from the Creasy's. And I'll tell you a little secret. I used to be terrified of Mr. Creasy. He doesn't know that because I had the biggest crush. My first 9th grade girlfriend, his daughter Leah. And I would, come past his house every day. But nothing but fond memories. Family spent, all through my high school years on Mandarin. So a very, very great community, nothing but a positive experience. I went on, graduated from high school, kind of trying to figure the whole college thing out. Did a year at Ohio State, came back, did a year at UC, still trying to figure it out. Well, let me do a little stint in the military, join the National Guard, trying to figure it out, get some money for college. Ended up finishing and joining the Cincinnati Police Department in 1988. Got married in 1990. My wife and I wanted to buy a home. What place did we start to look? Forest Park. Ended up buying a home in 1993 on Loganberry Circle, where I still am today. So when I say very, very near a lifelong resident of Forest Park, and I have to make a confession, it's my wife. She will not let us leave Forest Park. I've tried to a number of times, and she just will not have it. I tell her, I'm the one that grew up here, but she is she's so fond of our community and our neighbors that she just will not part from it, and I think that speaks volumes of a community where many of the people that I went to high school with, I'm still in contact with today. Seeing them progress in their careers, and as we've interacted in our professional lives, it's for a city or a greater Cincinnati region this size that you can still cross paths with people that have come from your school. That's a very unique thing for a city of this size. And there are a lot of people that have come through Forest Park Green Hills School District that have done wonderful things across the country. And I'm so proud of it. And you know, we all know that's a unique thing to Cincinnati, that you claim your high school more than you do the college that you went to, because it's something that gives you such a great sense of pride. A little bit about my professional career. As Bill mentioned, I joined the Cincinnati Police Department in 1988. A lifelong dream. Another little secret, I tried to join the Forest Park Police Department prior to joining Cincinnati. I took the test for Forest Park, passed the test. They put me on a waiting list. They selected another candidate. I applied for Cincinnati. When I was in the academy at Cincinnati, Forest Park called me to come in for an interview before council to get an opportunity to be hired. But I was already in the Cincinnati Police Academy. Could have gone a very different path, Bill. I might be sitting there wearing those Eagles instead of, but it went the other way. But as I mentioned, began that career in 1988, really eager to give back to the community. And I think a big part of that comes from being part of a community that really mattered to me. Having a sense of community. And that is something that, Mr. Greenwald, having that sense of community really led me to want to be a police officer. I joined the Cincinnati Police Department in 1988, began my career in District 4. Spent the first year there, went down to District 1. That was where I had an opportunity to do a lot of different things, as Bill mentioned in a little bit of my profile. I spent time patrolling the streets. I was an investigator. I worked undercover, worked as a community liaison officer, where I got to work very closely with community groups and organizations like this, learning to connect with people. And I think that is something that has helped me, and I've carried with me throughout my nearly 35 years in this work now, which, wow, seems a long time, hard to say. Nearly 35 years this year. Promoted to sergeant, worked on all 3 shifts, helping young officers develop. Spent some time in our internal affairs unit. Spent about 3 years there until I was promoted to lieutenant. Spent a couple of years back in District 4, working the night shift, promoted to captain in 2004. Spent some time as our night commander, then I went back and was the commander of our internal investigations unit. During that time, that was shortly after the civil unrest in 2001, where the city of Cincinnati was really going through a tumultuous time and really trying to figure out what type of police department it wanted to be and how we police the communities that we serve. Spent some time leading in that effort to help us really come into compliance and how we investigated allegations of officer misconduct and how we would work with community oversight groups into being a transparent and a department that the community could trust. Spent a couple of years there, then had the opportunity to take over District 4 as the commander. That was what I thought was my dream job, what my goal was. And it was probably one of the highlights of my career. I spent 5.5 years as the commander of District 4, doing everything. Being a district commander in a larger department is like being your own police chief. You get to run all the different operations and all the different strategies and develop those relationships and how that district would go. Spent 5.5 years there, and then was selected to go and lead our criminal investigation section. And also at the same time, our special investigation section, which was quite a bit. All of the criminal investigations, which included homicide, financial crimes, personal crimes, sex crimes, and then also all of our narcotics and intelligence investigations. Yes.
Ask a question. What neighborhoods were encompassed in District 4?
District 4 is comprises of 10 neighborhoods, all the way from Mount Auburn up through Coreyville, Avondale, Bond Hill, Paddock Hills, Hartwell. It's mainly the central part of the city that stretch all the way up from, went all the way up from Liberty Street in downtown all the way up to Compton and Vine and Hartwell. So a very long distance, but that center strip of the city of Cincinnati. Yeah, it's amazing I still remember that after all of this time. Yes.
I just read an alert that they are going down to Florida.
Yes, an interesting thing. You know, something that was long overdue. You see most police departments around the country are having trouble with staffing, getting people to join the professions. At a time when Chief Arns and I joined, we were competing with literally hundreds and thousands of other people for a handful of jobs. Now we're, you know, our recruiting efforts are tremendous. We're almost begging people to come into the profession. So I think that it was something that the city needed to try to do, to consolidate, to be able to provide the service that they best could. A little bit more, I became chief in 2015, spent 6.5 years as the police chief for the city. I retired in February of last year, took about 6 weeks off and started at the University of Cincinnati in April of last year and have been there ever since. So a very good transition. I'm very proud of both of those departments and just been very proud to be a part of it. I can go on and on about all of the things I have, but I think, you know, I'm certainly open to answer any questions that you might have.
I have one other question. Yes. About the incident. I'm an officer under the authority of the school, university at one time, found in threatening to him, to his life, that one of the students in a car was driving away from him in such a way that he thought it might endanger him, and used his weapon lethally.
Yeah, that happened in 2015, right before I became chief for the city. I remember I was there I got called in that afternoon when that happened. I don't believe that the gentleman was a student, but what was happening at that particular time, the university was engaging in policing activities that they really should not have been. And I feel very comfortable in saying that because they've openly said that. They've made a lot of transition since then. They went through a number of years under self-imposed oversight to change some of those policies and practices. And a number of the folks who were heavily involved with that were colleagues of mine from the city who went to the university to help in that process. I think now you see a different style of policing. I think at that time, the university was spending a lot of effort in patrolling off campus. This happened down on on Vine Street, quite a distance away from campus. We don't do that anymore. You know, we are very narrowly focused on our campus and what we call our concentration of student residence, where our students live immediately off campus, that surrounding area, and the campus itself. And we have a very deep partnership with the city, and we do a lot of things together. And our approach to those type of things is very different now.
Chief Isaac, would you speak on the importance of the community being involved in giving information to law enforcement to help solve crimes?
You know, I think it's critical. I mean, some of our basic philosophy around policing, you got two chiefs in here that'll tell you, you know, the police are the community and the community are the police. Without the community, we are ineffective in anything that we do. And I hate to say, it took law enforcement a long time to realize that. But I think what you see nowadays, law enforcement is very eager to have those partnerships with the community. I mean, we realize that without their help, we miss so much. Because there's very few, Forest Park is a great example of that. There's very little that can go on a street where somebody doesn't know what's going on or who's involved in it. If you can tap into those relationships, you can find out whatever you need to know. I can't tell you how many times over the year that I've been on a scene, and once things are clear, somebody will come up and whisper, "I'm gonna call you later and tell you what's really going on." You know, I mean, without that, it's just invaluable. We wouldn't solve half of what we are able to without that help.
I have another question relating to an earlier comment of yours. In the follow-up to the 2001 riots, there was a United States Department of Justice study force that led to the policy called collaborative agreement. A part of that was Community Review Board. I knew some people who served on that, and I wondered what you thought of it and what you feel, how it's operating now.
So a lot of history there. I touched on that a little bit. I think, you know, going through that. First, let me say this: in a law enforcement career, they tell you that civil unrest is something that you'll see one time in a 25 or 30-year career. That's usually the cycle of how these things run. I saw it 3 times in my career. That's far more than you should. I went through it in 2001. We went through some of it in 2015 after the Tenzing shooting that you talked about at the university, and then again in 2020. I mean, that's far more than you should go through in one professional career. But out of the 2001 riots, as I touched on, I think law enforcement as a whole, and particularly here in the Cincinnati region, we were trying to figure out how we should be policing. What was born out of that, the Department of Justice coming in, determining if they were going to put us under a federally mandated consent decree, take over the department, how was that going to happen? What, in a nutshell, evolved was we came to an agreement, a collaborative agreement between the parties that were suing the city, the union, and the city itself, on that we would make these changes on how we would police. Born out of that was the Citizen Complaint Authority. And that's what I believe you're referring to, that does independent and parallel investigations to what the department's internal investigation does. When I was the captain in internal, I was there during that time. So helping us, when I mentioned before, helping us to come in compliance around how investigations should look, how they should be completed, so that there can be confidence that that police are policing themselves. So I say that I'm a very big advocate of that philosophy. I've seen it work very well at times. I think at times there's some challenges around it. You know, you're talking about something that happened nearly 20 years or more now. At times, the investment in that effort has been strong, and at times it's been not so strong. I know that in recent years, there's been a lot of effort to try to strengthen that process, but I think it's important. I think civilian oversight only gives more legitimacy to police department. When we can do investigations on our own and an outside entity can come to the same conclusion, I think that only gives us more legitimacy in the work that we're doing. Yes, ma'am.
How are departments handling the racism that is going on and that has affected a lot of police that showed up on January 6th, and obviously what happened to George Floyd, et cetera? I'm just wondering, how can you weed out those people?
You know, I think it's the same with anything. I mean, I think it takes strong and committed leadership. I think we've seen a time in our country where we went through a period where oftentimes a lot of politically charged rhetoric spills over and comes to the forefront. And police are people too. They're human beings, and a lot of those things spill over. But I think when you talk about law enforcement, it's the same thing. You really have to be intentional about what you're doing, and it really breaks down into three facets. You have to have solid policies and procedures. You have to have solid training, and you have to enforce that. If you do those three things, I think by and large, most agencies will come out okay when they do that. If your policies and procedures are current and are national best practices, if you're training your people in the best way possible, making sure that that's current and it's up to national best practices, and you're holding your folks accountable, you will come out okay. Yes.
I've always been very concerned about educating people on how to interact with the police. You see so many cases where people or the police will do the wrong thing and escalate items. What can we do in terms of training with the people and how to interact?
You know, I'm very happy to see that in the last few years, that even on the law enforcement side especially, there's such a great emphasis on de-escalation, on whatever the encounter may be, on de-escalation. You know, you can encounter, people don't encounter police when they're having a good day or everything's going well. We usually show up when everything has gone wrong or there's a big problem. And you're meeting people at that level. And I kind of touched on it before, making sure your team is well trained in first recognizing that you're encountering people when they're not having such a great day or you wouldn't be there, and doing everything in their power to de-escalate a situation. And if a situation occurs where they have to meet that level of frustration, that we're not overreacting, that we're meeting it at the proper level and in the proper ways.
I can appreciate the training that's going on within the police departments, but what about the community? What can we do to reach the community in terms of how to interact? You
know, having these conversations, and I've done it more times than I can remember, and I think what we're seeing is, and I think it results into a lot of the violence that we're seeing, a lot of the conflicts that we're seeing, there's just an overall inability to resolve conflict. People do not know how to resolve conflict. you know, and to be able to take themselves down a peg when they're at that level. And I think, you know, some of the ideas that I've seen and that I've worked with different groups over that they've, you know, we've got some things that are going on in our city that are just, not just our city, but I think particularly our largest cities around the country, is that people are out in our community with PTSD. They are, for the violence that's taking place, the stresses, the social conditions, until we can really take an emphasis on addressing some of that and bring that temperature down, you know, then I think we'll see more success in resolving some of those conflicts. Investing in that. I know some communities are trying to have community-based trauma centers, making sure that mental health care is readily available to people. And, you know, making sure we're teaching our young people how to de-escalate conflict.
I have a question here also, following up on your need for new recruits and trying to get them to join the police department, to join any kind of a vocational world rather than the IT world.
Yes.
And what can we do as a community and as schools to help pull the youth into knowledge of, okay, de-escalation, vocational trades, get them to see the good sides of all the trades so they'll join the trades. How can we do that?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, or I have over the years, particularly dealing with the youth. There are a lot of programs out there and a lot of different things. The only thing that I've ever seen that really has a long-term impact on young people is mentorship.
What?
It's mentorship, mentoring. And that is, I think about my days here. I was blessed enough to have my father in my home, but I think about all of the kids that I grew up with, just the community baseball leagues. It's something you so rarely see anymore. All of those different, there was always something where you could get that type of mentorship. Anybody that I think that wants to help young people commit some time to some type of mentoring program, it makes a difference. There's so many young people out here just looking for an example to follow. And every time I've seen or been involved in any of those programs, they've always had some level of impact. And pointing those young people in that direction, I think, is really one of the few things that I see consistently makes a difference.
Did you participate in the Ranger program when you were in high school?
In the Ranger program? No, I wasn't a Ranger.
I have another question still, following up on the comment of mentorship. I happen to know a person who is a part of the Middletown Mentoring Teen Mentorship Council, TMC. He's a former president of that organization, and it's one that is continuing in Middletown, but I hadn't heard of them elsewhere. On the other side of the coin is a mentoring program out of what's called Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. What's your thought about?
Absolutely, I'm a big fan. My nephew works for the Boys and Girls Club, and I think that's a program that certainly helps. You know, I think there are others out there. I know there are a number of programs that we did with the Cincinnati Police Department. You know, our city camp, some of the other youth programs that we did, basketball, football, but always an educational component to it. And I think that's the key. You can use scouting, athletics, art, music. We even did a photography program. You can always have those hooks, but you always have to have that educational component to it to get the kids interested and use that to try to touch them in those critical areas.
How does the Boys and Girls Club decide where to open up places?
That one I couldn't tell you, but I know that they are out there, and they've always tried to have a presence and do what they can.
Other questions? Chief Isaacs, thank you so much for being a participant here. Oh, I see a question.
You talked about policies and procedures earlier, and I wonder if you'd comment a little bit about the city's accomplishment in accreditation and the value of that accreditation program, what it is and the value of it.
Absolutely. I think it's a critical thing. I think it's so important for any law enforcement agency to be able to demonstrate to the community that it serves that it has reached the goals that it set and that it's proficient in those training goals, those policy goals, to show that we are, whatever agency you're a part of, that you are prepared and capable to serve the community. I know for the city of Cincinnati during our time, and I know that's something that Forest Park is proud of, and where it's probably being accredited through CALEA, and also through the Ohio Collaborative, where these different policies and practices are established in a department. In order to receive that certification, must demonstrate that that training, those policies, and those practices are in place. I think that is why we see the challenges across the nation that we see. Now, don't get me wrong, terrible things can happen. This is not a perfect profession that we're in. And as I mentioned before, we're not always dealing with people that are having their best day. But departments that have those solid practices and procedures and training that are in place and that are validated through those accreditation agencies, you see far less of those challenges. I think the short answer is individuals that do such things clearly have some mental health challenges. And I touched on that earlier, just making sure that mental health support is available to anybody that is in that type of crisis. I know a lot of people talk about gun control. I'm a 35-year law enforcement veteran. I'm a United States Army veteran. I'm by no means am I anti-Second Amendment, but I think we need to make sure we're being careful with what we do with firearms in our country. I'm not anti-firearm, but I qualify that again. We need to be careful what we're doing. It can't fall into the hands of our young people. We have to make sure we're taking the extra steps to making sure that our young people are not getting access to these firearms.
They need to learn to debate instead of just picking up a gun.
The inability to resolve conflict. They were mean to me at school, so I'm gonna go and shoot up the school. Mental health, conflict resolution, making sure that's readily available and known. And we have to get better at identifying people that are in crisis. I think that's something law enforcement has to get better at. I think that our educators have to get better at, that I think that we all as a community have to get better at identifying and assisting people that are in crisis.
Do you go into the schools at all?
Do I go into the schools? Not so much anymore, but.
Here when you retired from downtown Cincinnati, I always felt safer because I knew you had done well here. But what can we do? We have to do something.
We do.
In school. And can't just say, we have to do something, we have to do it.
It seems though that we debate this so much that oftentimes nothing really gets done. There are law enforcement in schools. We have SROs in the schools in the city. We're on campus, obviously, and we interact with, our college students at every chance that we get. I know Forest Park has a school resource officer. I mean, so we look for those opportunities to interact and support our young people, and to do what we can to the best of our ability at this point. But I think it takes everybody pulling in the same direction on this, and unfortunately, that's not always the case. Our legislators don't often pull the same way that we're trying to, and really having that support from the community to do the same thing. So it continues to be a challenge. Absolutely, I'm a big fan. They've done, such great work. I can even, my daughters that they're grown now, but they still remember their DARE officers. They talk about, when DARE was being taught in the schools and how much of an impact that had on young people. So, but there are people out there that don't feel that law enforcement should be around our young people. We get that. We combat that they don't feel that it's positive reinforcement for police officers to be around young people. And that's not been my experience. All the time that I wore the uniform, kids flocked to us. They want that interaction. They're looking for it. Kids aren't fearing that. They want that. The fear doesn't come until later on when they're up to some stuff. That's when the fear comes. But the little ones, they flock to it. I mean, and I'm sure the other two chiefs here will tell you in their experience that the little kids love the police. Something makes you feel good doing the job. All right, I think I've talked enough.
I think you're doing a great job. Thank you. And I believe Brandon's got something here for you to commemorate your time here with us today.
Token manner, as a gift from us to you and to say thanks.
Thank you so much.
But I will just say one other thing. If this is not the right size,
Yeah, I'm a big guy. We'll make sure.
well,
That ought to work.
they have larger,
All right, we'll
if
see.
this doesn't.
If it doesn't work, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chief. What a wonderful presentation. And we need to do all we can do to help out the police, give them every opportunity they have to do their job, and to get our children to acknowledge that the police are the good people out there. They're the guys that they need for help when they need help. So the little ones are great. They look at it as that's a good person, and we don't want to lose that with the little ones. So thank you again.
Thank you.